Call this meeting to order. Stand for the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Good evening, everyone. We'll start with the roll call, please.
Mayor Bailey, Mr. Bateman,
Here.
Mr. Blair,
Here.
Mr. Hart,
Here.
Mr. Ori,
Yes.
Vice Mayor Phelps,
Here.
Mr. Ping.
Yes. Here. Move to excuse Mayor Bailey.
We call a vote, please.
Mr. Bateman,
Yes.
Mr. Blair,
Yes.
Mr. Hart,
Yes.
Mr. Ori,
Yes.
Vice Mayor Phelps,
Yes.
Mr. Ping.
Yes.
Carry 6-0.
Okay, with us tonight is our city manager, Dave Kennedy, assistant city manager, Corey Wright, clerk of council, Misty Clark, director of finance, Mark Medler, chief of police, Michael Gabrielson, city solicitor, Joe Braun. I think also in the audience, two former members of city council here in Loveland, Todd Osborne and Pat Mays. Did I miss anybody? Okay. With that, we'll go directly to open forum. There are two people that have signed up to speak. Kaya Bergen. Oh, good.
So again, my name is Kaya Bergen. I am from the Loveland Branch Library. I'm the branch manager, and I've been there 60 days today. So I just wanted to introduce myself and hopefully see all of you come to the Loveland Branch Library because we have so much to offer. We have a maker space. It has a silhouette, a 3D printer, and if you are a bike rider, it has a bike repair station. So we have everything you pretty much need at the library. So again, I just wanted to introduce myself. I'm Kaya Bergen, so thank you for having me tonight.
Welcome.
Thank you.
Yeah. Gage Bradford.
Hello, everyone. Gage Bradford with Hamilton County Resource, which is just recently been rebranded. We were formerly the Recycling and Solid Waste District. So we are a branch under the Environmental Services Department for the county. I am the community specialist. I'm here on a bit of specific business. We are required by the state EPA to update the county's solid waste plan every 5 years. After we're finished with that updating process, we have to request it to be ratified by all political jurisdictions in the county. And if we don't get a certain threshold of approval, then the Ohio EPA comes in and decides the county's plan for us. So that's why I'm here, to just kind of update everyone on where we're at in that process and lay out a timeline for it. But before I dig into the plan, I do want to just briefly touch on some other things that my office provides. So obviously we're here to help communities, schools, businesses, and everything of the like send less waste to the landfill, whether that be recycling, composting, secondhand stores, food pantries, things of that nature. So some of the programming that we have and fund year over year, we do about $1 million in grants every year. A large portion of that is dedicated to our residential recycling incentive program, which is basically just an incentive for communities to try and divert as much waste as possible. I believe Mr. Kennedy might handle those duties for you guys annually, and I think last session Loveland got around $19,000 of a kickback for their recycling and composting efforts, so that's pretty good. We do have an environmental enforcement task force. Task force might be a stretch. It is just one officer, but we fund him to investigate illegal dumping and things of that nature throughout the entire county. So if there are ever any issues with illegal dumping, refrigerators, tires, C&D, stuff of that nature, he will investigate and prosecute as much as needed. And lastly, we do fund 3 yard trimmings drop-off facilities throughout the county, free to any Hamilton County resident that's trying to get rid of some yard trimmings, leaves, things of that nature. I think the closest one to Loveland might be at Bezak Landscaping, somewhere over in this neck of the woods. I could follow up with the exact address. That's certainly not all of our programming. Like I said, we've got a ton geared towards schools, businesses, you name it, but that's not necessarily why I'm here tonight. So I'll move on to the plan. Some of the main updates, it is a 300-page plan, so I'm not going to go through everything that's available on our website. But some of the main updates we're doing. So the residential recycling incentive grant that I mentioned, we're going to maintain funding at $800,000 for that for at least the next 5 years. And the only minor tweak is we are going to implement kind of a minor threshold. Any community that applies and does everything properly, we will be looking at somewhere in between a $2,500 and $5,000 minimum, because it's kind of been a rich get richer, poor stay poor incentive program. So we're trying to get away from that. I don't expect that to really mess with Loveland's numbers at all. We are going to increase our annual funding for business assistance from $145,000 to $245,000. Like I said earlier, that comes in a number of ways. We've got internship programs, grants, a lot of free educational things, interior recycling needs for free. So a lot of different things we can help businesses with. Waste audits would be another. So we're going to increase our funding there by $100,000. And lastly, so it is a long plan. Like I said, it's like 300 pages. This was not required of us, but we did hire a firm from downtown to review the plan with us step by step, and they were focused on diversity, equity, and inclusion, just to make sure our programming and our funding wasn't slanted towards one demographic or geographic area in the county. So we're really proud of that and wanted to make sure everybody is aware. So we're going to be officially requesting communities to ratify this sometime in the first quarter of next year. Once we do make that official request, you will have 90 days to do so. Beyond that, I'm happy to answer any questions. I am going to leave behind some information. Like I said, the full plan is on the website. My name is Gage Bradford, Community Specialist. So please, anybody that might be interested in any of these programs I mentioned, get a hold of me.
Thank you for coming here and telling us about it. Anybody have any questions?
Wonderful.
Thank you. Happy
Thank you.
Thanksgiving.
Sir? Thanks, everyone.
We'll move on to a couple ordinances that I believe the clerk can read for us. The first one. Oh, sorry. Let me go back to the minutes. We have two sets of minutes, both from November 7th. Any comments, changes, additions, subtractions, anything?
I'll make a motion to approve the work session minutes from November 7th.
Second.
Call the roll, please.
Mr. Blair?
Yes.
Mr. Hart?
Yes.
Mr. Ori?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Phelps?
Yes.
Mr. Ping?
Yes.
Mr. Bateman?
Yes.
Motion carries 6-0.
I'll make another motion to accept the city council meeting minutes from November 7th.
Second.
Please call the roll.
Mr. Hart?
Yes.
Mr. Ori?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Phelps?
Yes.
Mr. Ping?
Yes.
Mr. Bateman?
Yes.
Mr. Blair?
Yes.
Motion carries 6-0.
Thank you. Now we can go on to the second reading of two ordinances. I guess, Ms. Clark, if you could read the first one.
Ordinance amending Chapter 1156, Table of Permitted Uses of the Codified Ordinances of the City of Loveland, Ohio.
Okay, this was, of course, covered in our last meeting. Anybody have any comments, questions, concerns? Okay, then why don't we call the roll?
Mr. Ori?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Phelps?
Yes.
Mr. Ping?
Yes.
Mr. Bateman?
Yes.
Mr. Blair?
Yes.
Mr. Hart?
Yes.
Ordinance 114 is adopted by a vote of 6-0.
All right, could you read the second ordinance, please?
Ordinance amending Loveland Code of Ordinances, Chapter 111, Schedule of Fees, Fines, and Other Charges, creating the water main replacement fee.
Okay, this too was addressed by Mr. Kennedy at our last meeting in some degree of detail, but if there are questions or comments,
Comment.
go ahead, Mr. Hart.
Just once we amend this, I would make a suggestion that this gets explained thoroughly in the next 30 days
Yes.
before the next bill comes, before these bills come out. Maybe in a straight from the heart, the city's website.
It's going to be on the it's on the next bill. It's actually
Good.
printed on the bill. It leaves my phone number, and it just says effective. You got to get creative with your space, but basically it says with your next billing, a water maintenance flat rate will be on there, and then left my phone number, and then I wanted that to filter in a little bit, and then we'll be doing a little summary, Krista and I, and we'll, if necessary, you could throw if anyone wants to speak at it at the December meeting, it will have fettered in. You're more than welcome to, invite anyone that has any concern to speak at open forum, but I would hope that I can handle most of the comments and explain it. So.
Have you had any telephone calls or questions, people walking in?
No, those will start once people get their utility bills that are being loaded now, and the message is pretty clear on there what we're doing, as much as you can with X number of characters. So.
Well, the fee starts in January.
Yeah,
so
but
that's what
bills,
I'm saying. Is
yes,
we got to really hit it strong here.
Yes,
to let everybody know ahead.
The bills go out in the end of December. That's why we're working with our company and Mark to have a separate fund, because it's very important that people realize that this is going in. I say fund, I mean line item. That it'll be in a distinct. Pat Mays could walk in a month from now and say, "I want to see total revenue and total expenditures. Expenditures should be zero. Revenue should be whatever."
Thank you.
Yeah.
Did we call the vote on that yet?
No.
Not yet.
All right, why don't we go ahead and do that?
Vice Mayor Phelps,
Yes.
Mr. Ping,
Yes.
Mr. Bateman,
Yes.
Mr. Blair,
Yes.
Mr. Hart,
Yes.
Mr. Ori.
Yes.
Ordinance 115 is adopted by a vote of 6-0.
Okay, then we have some pending resolutions. The first one is OEPA Water H2O Ohio Grant Agreement Authorization. I think there's a memo from the city engineer, Cindy Klopfenstein, on this, but Dave, or Corey, I should say, do you want to speak?
Sure. Thank you, Vice Mayor. So this is a resolution that would accept a grant agreement through the OEPA's H2 Ohio grant program. And so really kudos to Ricky Gregory on this. Ricky was able, our water plant superintendent was able to locate this source of funding, and then working with Cindy and Mr. Kennedy was able to put this together and found this $50,000. So what is this? Well, in short, US EPA now requires, they basically issued an unfunded mandate that you have to go out and map your service lines. And they want to know about lead service lines. And this all originates back to the whole issue in Flint, Michigan and all that. Well, anyway, they changed their revisions, or they changed their rules. They revised those. And now, thankfully, we have an opportunity to map those. Well, the city has an extensive, mapping program of our service mains. We do not have the service lines. And so it's important to know what are the service lines. The service lines are from the main to the meter pit, basically, not from the meter pit to the house. That's a very important distinction. That from the meter pit to the house is the private property's responsibility. But we will go out as part of this grant. We can spend up to $50,000, and we'll be able to map where each of the 4,900 and change, plus or minus, service lines are in the city. We'll know exactly where they are. We have GIS capability to map that. We'll be able to field locate those, hopefully within a few inches or maybe a foot or something with the locating equipment. So the grant would help us pay for that, some of that locating equipment, and would also pay for time, staff time, the GIS. There's a cube that goes with it, and to do that. So it's an important project. Part of owning a water system, you have to know where your service lines are. We're we think we know where they are if you find the meter pit, but it's really important to actually know where they are. So, and with that, when they open that, they'll be able to survey and document what that line is, and by observation, they'll be able to tell whether or not we have lead or copper lines or whatever. If a homeowner would be concerned about lead from their meter to their house, I would recommend they contact, a plumber to look at their service line inside their house. I talked to Mr. Gregory, I believe it was yesterday. He said in 20 years of looking at meters, he hasn't seen one. That doesn't mean a lead service line but that doesn't mean they don't exist. But he did also make the comment that we just replaced one of the oldest sections in the city. They found some galvanized pipe and some other things, but they didn't find any lead. So that's positive. So with this would authorize Mr. Kennedy to execute the grant award and would allow us to proceed with this project. Importantly, as Ms. Klopfenstein notes, they're basically they'll issue 75% of the funding up front, and then they'll withhold 25% of it for completion of that. So that concludes my report.
Questions? Mr. Ori?
Yeah, Mr. Wright, there's a note here in the memo that says that the pipe material will be indicated from the public utility side and the private customer side.
They'll be able to see in the box what, in the meter pit, what that is, but we don't know what's inside the house.
Right.
So it could change. And it could change in the ground. We don't know if it's been repaired, but we'll be able to at least assess
at the meter.
At the meter, yes.
Yeah. Okay.
Mr. Hart?
Do you expect that this $50,000 will cover this expense, or do you think that, or do you have any idea what this looks like?
I think so. So I guess my answer is we have to make it work, and we'll get the job done for the maximum amount of funds. I'm hopeful that we get it done for under the $50,000. We have up to the maximum to spend that. If it's, we'll certainly be close, I think. And particularly because we're making use of the co-op, the internship program. That is a benefit to the city as opposed to hiring a firm that would charge you multiple hundreds of dollars an hour to go out and do that.
Sure.
So I think we should be positive. We should be able to do it for this amount.
Good. Thank you.
Anyone else? Any cost to the city on this?
The grant is $50,000, and again, it is basically they're just going to give us 75% of it now, and then we would basically have the eligible expenditures, which we would have to provide proof of all of that to get the remaining 25%.
Okay.
So if we get it done for under 50, it appears that it's $50,000 that we don't have to pay for.
Okay, if it's above that.
Yeah, if it's above that, it would be on our dime. Yes.
And then you mentioned the meter pit. Where is that typically in a residential?
So it's going to be around. If you have sidewalk, sometimes it's in the sidewalk, sometimes it's right behind the sidewalk. I know at my house, which I'm not in the city limits, but it's 10 feet behind the back of curb. You can usually find them. The old ones are dark color. Some of them have newer lids. Some of them have black lids. But they'll be around. Most of them should be around lids. Now, I did run into one. We had a phone call. It was a few months ago. Somebody called and they thought they had a large storm sewer in their sidewalk. It actually was what the developer used as the meter box, and I had not seen one like that before. It was a square. It almost looked like a storm sewer manhole lid or something. So it'll vary, but generally it'll be in your front yard, kind of in or around the sidewalk.
And then if determining whether it's lead, is that just a visual check?
They're going to look at it and they'll be able to tell.
Okay. I always wondered about that. Okay. And I can't help but thinking, and I think you confirmed this in a prior conversation, that Flint, Michigan had a lot to do with why this program's being put forward by the Ohio EPA.
The Ohio EPA, and then, that's responsive to the U.S. EPA changing their rules. So.
All right, if nobody else has any comments or questions, why don't we go ahead and read the resolution, please?
Resolution accepting the OEPA H2 Ohio Lead Service Line Inventory and Mapping Program Grant Award in an amount not to exceed $50,000 and further authorizing the city manager to execute the grant agreement in furtherance of the same.
Any further comment? If not, you can please take the roll.
Mr. Ping?
Yes.
Mr. Bateman?
Yes.
Mr. Blair?
Yes.
Mr. Hart?
Yes.
Mr. Ori?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Phelps?
Yes.
Resolution 116 is adopted by a vote of 6-0.
Thank you. The next resolution is with regard to the Loveland Sims Fire Department contract, Fifth Amendment. Mr. Kennedy?
So the city adopted our current contract with LSFD on November 11th, 2014. That became effective on January 1. That contract was basically set the compensation through 2019, and we had language that both parties would proceed in good faith to reach an agreement. What Chief Huber and I have been doing ever since then was we've been doing them in 3-year increments, and that on top of other amendments that we made for time staffing, and the First Amendment dealt with the city's working with the fire department to build the training tower. Second Amendment, Third Amendment were both involved to peak time staffing, where we made amendments. And then the Fourth Amendment is what got us through 22 for our compensation. So this would get us through, the next schedule would get us through 2025 with a 3-year contract. We've been at 5%. The only reason why you'll notice a little difference in the first year at 5.4, we also have basically an understanding with Sims that there'll be slight adjustments based on population. The 2020 census wasn't complete in terms of being published when we did the amendment that got us to this current year. So our population went up exponentially, and that got us to 5.49, and we're back to 5% increases each year. A lot is done with this funding, obviously, least of which is one of the finest fire departments in the state of Ohio. I think that the levy that was passed in May, I feel shows the city's, our residents' support for the fire department. And for all of those of us that get to work with Chief Huber, he is pretty strict with every penny and does not. I think you saw that. I know I saw it when, if you remember, where we changed the chassis recently on the vehicle, saving about $500,000. And how much should you guys save by ordering a fire truck the other day that you won't get till 2024? So those are pretty good uses of this money. But he's dealing with what everyone else is also dealing with, is keeping firemen. And we're getting them in here. Same thing Chief Gabrielson's dealing with. So, but all in all, that's all I really had to add. So this contract will get us through 2025. Mark and I have these numbers in the 23 budget to the penny. We've now split them amongst 5 funds because there's an additional levy fund. And so it's proportionately based upon each of those funds.
Any questions for Mr. Kennedy or comments? Mr. Hart?
Do we expect this number to keep growing at 5% moving forward after 2025?
That's a good question. If it's based strictly on population, does the city level out? Does the city have a different type of development that would a more downtown development be equal to X small subdivisions in terms of the needs of the fire department? I don't know. How much will we spread out? Will his service area spread out into Warren County more someday? That's a big factor in it. I know it was a big factor in citing this new station. 5% is mostly towards cost of living increases for the firefighters. That's where most of this contract is going to, is just it, in essence, being transferred over to the firefighters' salaries. So, we share that. It goes up incrementally the same amount with Sims Township.
So Sims is putting an additional 5% as well.
Yeah, I don't know what 3-year cycle they're on. They could have done it a couple years ago when they started. I do know that when I got here in September of 14, Frank Klain, who Joe worked with, was ironing out the details for the contract that went into effect. So that contract was signed by Sims. What they did at that point in time was the shift changed. It went to 55-45 with Sims paying the greater share. Used to be where Sims has a larger commercial call number. We have a more elderly population. The lodge is a big portion of the LSFD's runs. A lot of lodges show there is a bit of an equal. I believe that was a pretty big score for Frank Klain back in 14 to get LSFD to agree to take a larger amount. So their portion of the overall contract is greater than the city's. How they pay that, if they have a deal where they're paying it 2-3, sort of like, not necessarily my biz, I don't know.
Gotcha.
But we've agreed on 3%.
I certainly support our fire department, and we'll be supporting this. As I look at this, it's over a 10-year period. It's a 50% increase.
Yep.
It just seems like a fairly large jump.
Yep.
Over that course of time. So.
See what he said. It's close to 2. Yeah. Anybody else? There were some years where obviously there was either no increase or a small increase, but right over 10 years, it adds up. But I would think that as population levels off and hopefully inflation gets more reasonably, we'd be looking at lower rates in the future. But that's all we can hope for. But okay, well, with that, can the resolution be read?
Resolution authorizing the city manager to execute the Fifth Amendment to the Fire and EMS service contract between the City of Loveland and the Loveland Sims Fire Department.
Hearing no other comments, we can go to a vote, please.
Mr. Bateman?
Yes.
Mr. Blair?
Yes.
Mr. Hart?
Yes.
Mr. Ori?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Phelps?
Yes.
Mr. Ping?
Yes.
Ordinance 117 is adopted by a vote of 6-0.
Okay, our next resolution is authorizing payment of license and fees for the city's financial software. So, Mr. Medler, do you have anything to say on it?
Thank you, Vice Mayor and Council. Pretty much a housekeeping item for our financial software every year. We have our contracted amount. It is over $15,000, so that's why it requires a resolution.
Anybody have any questions for Mr. Medler or otherwise? Go ahead.
Do you recall, Mr. Medler, what the fee was last year?
So last year it was $20,395.50, and this year it's $24,658.97.
On up 5% also.
Right.
Yeah. Okay.
Yes.
This is not the super duper magical budget software that you guys have been talking about. That's coming. That's coming. We're going to do that later, right?
That'll be later.
All right.
Yes, sir.
If no other comments, we can read the resolution, please.
Resolution authorizing payment of an annual license, support, and maintenance fees for the city's financial software.
Any other comment or questions? If not, why don't we go ahead and call the roll?
Mr. Blair?
Yes.
Mr. Hart?
Yes.
Mr. Ori?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Phelps?
Yes.
Mr. Ping?
Yes.
Mr. Bateman?
Yes.
Resolution 118 is adopted by a vote of 6-0.
Okay. Next on the agenda is another resolution with regard to insurance renewal. And Mr. Wright, do you want to address that?
Thank you, Vice Mayor. Once again, our insurance resets on it's a 1/1/12/31 policy period. So we have to do this. And this year, what we did, first of all, we did send out intent to shop with the current provider, Public Entities Pool of Ohio. We have the coverage is structured in many coverage buckets. You have liability of automotive, you have police liability, you have property, property, all perils, the whole 9 yards. So with that, we have our current policy limits, $5 million per occurrence, $0 deductibles on a couple of those, $5,000 deductibles on some other policy buckets on that. And so because we have a 12/31 renewal, it's time that we do this now. And as part of this, and again, a good exercise to do is each year you should go through your schedules and you should go through and sit with your department heads and review those to make sure that you're adequately capturing all of your equipment, all of your facilities, anything you're missing or whatnot. And you really do that for two reasons. One, so you can identify whose equipment and things and property are you insuring and what risks are you insuring. And then the other part of that is how do you allocate those premium costs? And so with that, we went back to public employees pool and asked them to assign premium allocations on buildings, property, equipment on a per fund basis. We have, I think we use 7 funds, so fire, police, general operations, parks, all of our major operating funds. And with that, we went about the task of trying to allocate those and then also making sure that our schedules were updated. So, the city, this is kind of an impressive number. So if you look at what the city's total insured values are, it's around $39.7 million. That's a significant amount of risk, with that if we were to have a catastrophic claim or whatever. And so as part of that, that doesn't mean that we're going to lose all 39 million at one time, but this building's this is a significant resource here. The safety center obviously is a significant resource. The water towers, very critical to our operation. So, when you go through that, you look at that, what are we paying? So last year, our premium was a little over $100,000. Part of the premium additions were, additions in property, making sure we had things like generators scheduled, making sure we had equipment added, deducted, or whatnot on that schedule. And so when we did that, we went to PEP and they said, okay, here's your premium allocations. And then also this year we had a reappraisal. So there's a company, it's called the CBIZ report. They come in, they do an evaluation of all your property over $100,000. And there's a portion in the memo. Basically, we had about a 22.5% increase in insured building values due to this reappraisal. And so when you look at what was our premium renewal, well, it was a little bit over 109,000. Well, so what is that? It's about an 8.5-9% increase year over year. So you have some hardening in the insurance markets, and I can tell you, a lot of times, many years previous, the insurance markets were fairly soft. You would see flat, very very minuscule increases, usually due to content or expanded operations or whatnot. This year, the bulk of our increase is due to revaluation. We had a small policy increase due to law enforcement liability, about $1,200 out of that $8,500 is due to law enforcement liability premiums, not because of the city's operation. That's just an industry-wide standard. The insurance companies are pricing that enhanced risk into that, and then the rest of it's property. It's just insured values and property. So, but what's important to remember is that $109,000 we get a premium loyalty credit if we remain with PEP, and that's almost $4,000. So our net out of pocket for next year will be about $105. I think the resolution will specify it. It's $105,262.48. So that's a great renewal, quite frankly. I've been on the end, in my experience in the past, I've been on the end of 12 to 15% renewals, and because of claims made. We don't have a lot of claims made. We have a couple of significant claims, but we're working through those, and that's a testament to the city's operations from top to bottom. So with that, I think this is a good renewal for the city, and PEP. We've been pleased with PEP's service. I had not worked with PEP prior. I know of them. I'd not worked with them. Very responsive, and they're very on the spot with regard to policy changes and whatnot. So, what are the options? We can renew as is. We can stay where we are. We since we did send them notice to shop, we could finish with another provider. I can tell you that the two other providers I talked to said we can't touch it for that because you have a claims made provision in that you have to set that aside, and B, they're not going to be able to bring us in at the rate that PEP is providing us. And then the other part of that too is cost allocations. So but aside from your general liability limits, we went through an exercise and said which funds should pay for what. The most expensive thing that we insure outside of buildings is equipment. And, the fire department equipment, by doing this, we're able to adequately price in that risk and that premium so that the fire department is allocated an equitable share based on the actual risks that the city insures. So we have adjusted that, and that was included in this year's budget preparations. So that will be a modified amount. And then, the rest of it's just reflected and allocated based on the various funds. So sorry about that deep dive into that. I like property insurance. I think it's important. It's what we do. It's protecting the taxpayer resources. And I think all in all, this was a good exercise and a good renewal for this year. So happy to answer any questions.
Any questions or comments?
I will add that there's a couple ways to do this insurance, and one of them, the most efficient way and the best use of it, is the way Corey did it, which was you don't want to be forgetting a key piece of equipment, and you don't want to be insuring stuff we sold on gov deals X number because you can't forget, and you certainly don't want. And he had to take into account the new public works building that's coming in that isn't online yet, the old one that's coming out, things that we own temporarily. You're going to be, all those there's a lot involved in doing this right. You can simply just let your PEP know you're renew and get your bid and hope it's close. And, or you can really do a deep dive. I think Corey's been working on this for almost 3 months. And the part of it that I think the big part of what I liked about what he did this year was it's much more equitable that the street department is paying a fair share, the fire department's paying a share, but Chief Gabrielson's budget's paying a fair share, and that's really what it's all about. That everyone is in, and you rest assured. And part of what the other companies can't touch, even though they're all beginning to add that full emergency vehicle replacement, that's a big deal with PEP, and that was the carrot when those of us that have been around for a while went to PEP. Meaning you got a $1.2 million fire truck, you total it, you get full replacement value. You get a 2023. So I got to tell you, he put a ton of work into this. And the fact that they sort of knew we were shopping it around a little bit, I think made them really sharpen their pencil. Considering the amount that our valuations and our equipment went up, and to only have this kind of increase, this is a big deal for the city, and it's an important part of what goes on this year. And it's going on while you're doing the budgeting and all that kind of stuff. So it was great that we ran this. So you got to feel good about what's in front of you guys on this renewal.
Mr. Ori?
Quick question. We're insuring $39.7 million. What was it last year? Do you recall?
The total insured value, I'd have to look at. Let me dive into my binder. I know that your property valuations alone went up about $4.5 million. So just that in and of itself, there was that $4.5 million. So backing into that, we're about 35-ish and change. And then with vehicle additions and modifications, a lot of those are going to come out in the wash. But again, I'd say we were in the 34 to 35 million range without going through page by page in the binder. But yeah,
Okay.
So a big jump, mainly due to the reappraisals. But the big key is you throw a couple of nice new ambulances on there. As Mr. Kennedy indicated, a new ambulance can cost you upwards of $250,000 to $300,000. A new ladder is going to cost $1.2 million,
Yeah.
and that replacement cost is a big deal.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah, I would note that your memo on page 78 talks about the property value increasing from 31 million to 39 million. That may be from the CBIZ report.
From the CBIZ, the total report. And so when you just look at square footage costs, and then they allocate, your vehicle costs and then your content costs. Interestingly, content costs, I've never seen it where content costs went up in some places and then went down. Those stayed more, a little, basically flat. But we all know that if there was a catastrophic loss in this building to replace chairs versus 5 years ago, an office chair is going to cost you $1,000 versus $700. It's probably 30% more or whatever, and that's all across the board. So, I think when you look at what our policy limits are, I think we're well insured. We could spend another $4,000 or so and bump our liability limits, but I really don't think we need to based on our operation. And candidly, our rep, his job is to service our account, but it also behooves him to sell us more. And he was very honest. He said, "You guys are good where you are," and I think we're solid. So,
yeah. Well, when I saw the value of the property go up as much as it did, and then I saw the premium increase, which was only $8,000, and then I saw the loyalty credit. This appears to make sense, and I guess I'm pointing these things out to commend you and Dave for this. With that, could you read the resolution, please?
Resolution authorizing the city manager to enter into an agreement with the Public Entities Risk Pool of Ohio for property, casualty, and liability insurance for calendar year 2023.
Any further comment or questions? If not, why don't we go ahead and call the roll?
Mr. Hard?
Yes.
Mr. Ori?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Phelps?
Yes.
Mr. Ping?
Yes.
Mr. Bateman?
Yes.
Mr. Blair?
Yes.
I already called Mr. Hart. Resolution 119 is adopted by a vote of 6-0.
Okay. We'll move on to ordinances in their first reading. The first one has to do with a job creation incentive program. I believe, Mr. Wright, you're going to address that.
yes, sir. Thank you, Mr. Vice Mayor. So we have the city adopted what we call our JCIP, which is basically a economic incentive program for properties that would allow businesses to receive, based on certain payroll figures, tax credits for employee wages, for a portion of employee wages that they contribute, with regard to enhancement of the city's payroll tax revenue and all that. And really what it's geared toward, we have the CRAs. The CRAs are geared toward significant construction improvements. So if you're a new project, you build a big building or whatever, there's significant tax value that's going to be associated with that, you can offer the CRA under the city CRA program. But because we're in a redevelopment phase, the thought is that a lot of businesses may not make improvements that would be adequately captured as part of the revaluation or revaluation process, depending on the county, depending on the process the auditor goes through, depending on the, the permitting and all that. And they may move right in, but they may bring 100 jobs with them. And so how do you, but they may need some incentive to come to the city. And so in order to be competitive, you can offer the city develop this JCIP program. So to date, we have not had any participants. I don't know if that's a lack of awareness, a lack of education. I don't know what it is. But the thought is the program comes up every 2 years. And it's designed to, I think 2019? 3 years. 3 years on that. So we would renew this. This ordinance would renew it for 2 years through 23, 24, 20. Did I say 25? This is 3 more years. Yeah, 3. I'm losing count on my years. But in any regard, the thought is when we looked at the program, said how can we make this program potentially more attractive to businesses that would come and relocate to the city where we might not be able to otherwise offer a tax abatement on a traditional property tax abatement basis. And I can speak that we had we offered a grant program from my community with our JEDs, where we would do this when we would lure businesses to the township for that and offer an employee wage rebate back equal to a portion of the a portion of the percentage of the employee wages generated from their payroll. And so this program is right in line with that and is a fantastic program. Additionally, when we looked at the ordinance, how can we enhance that further? So when looking, and I specifically looking at large tracts of land. We have a single large tract of land left in the Commerce Park. There could be opportunities for development and expansion of existing facilities, repurposing, big office user, whatever, and then Chestnut in particular. And say, how can we land a major player, somebody that would generate in excess of $5 million of payroll, which is that's a big number for the city. If you generate $5 to $10 million in payroll, that's a significant economic impact of the city's operation, both in terms of economic opportunity to the city and our residents here, as well as to the city's revenue base. And so looking at the program, we said, okay, let's make the program a little richer to see if people might be more inclined to come relocate to the city, because we are in this active redevelopment phase, and also offer a potential earnings a corporate net earnings tax credit that would be entirely discretionary, that council would have the ability through the city and on the city manager's recommendation to offer that. And so the program is entirely at the discretion of council. Ultimately, every agreement would be brought before council. If we had somebody that would participate in that, we would review the project, review the terms of that, review what their payroll numbers are, what is their economic impact, what is their total investment. All of these are conversations that would be had prior to ever coming before this body. And so you would look at the program. Do they meet certain thresholds? Is it a major player? Is it a 10, 15, $20 million payroll operation? If it is, okay, well, what else do you need to choose us over, pick another community, to choose us over Sharonville, to choose us over Blue Ash, to choose us over somebody else? And this would give us the ability to offer that additional tax credit, because you may have a high earning corporate entity that would want to situate 200, 300, 400 jobs here, that may need some earnings tax credit offset for a defined period. Looking at the legislation, again, all of these they would run concurrent with each other. If you had a circumstance where you had a company that would be offered both, those would run concurrent. They don't have to be the same term. We've laid out the terms for the 25% earning the employee wage tax credit, those thresholds, and try to make that more granular, because, for a small business, they may have a $500,000 payroll. Getting to $1 million is a big deal. If you're a $5 million payroll and getting to $7 million, that's still a big deal, but that may be less of a big deal because of the growth. It's all incremental, and it's all about scale, and being able to scale that up or scale that down and have that flexibility to be responsive to potential, businesses that would locate here. I can tell you that other communities are very aggressive in trying to attract businesses here, and I think that we should not put ourselves at a disadvantage in that, and give ourselves every tool in the toolbox to be able to get those businesses that we want here. And again, we're going to benefit. The city's going to benefit. The operation will benefit from that, because we're not giving them everything back that they're paying. We're giving them a fraction of what they're paying back to locate here, and taking that economic impact and the economic multiplier of that. And a guy I used to work for used to say, activity breeds activity. And if you promote that, and you promote those businesses, and you become a destination, people are gonna continue to want to come here and want to be here and invest in our city and bring jobs to our city. So that's really what the revisions are designed to do, is to give us more tools in the toolbox so we can compete. Certainly we would bring all of those to council for review and approval. So happy to answer any questions.
Questions? So the corporate net earnings tax incentive is new. We didn't have that.
That is a new component.
Okay.
Yes.
All right.
And what
How does that work?
so basically, and how we had it in our other communities. So, and we would have to hammer out the details with Mr. Medler, but basically, and it's not, you can't carry it over in the legislation. So, unless it was otherwise specifically authorized by city council to do that. So I can tell you that in a prior community through our JED, we offered a corporate net earnings tax credit that did roll over year to year. And so they could either offset against that earnings tax liability, or they could accrue any excess on that and they could roll that over. Now, it had a period where it fell off. Now, 1 year, they might not have met that credit and they would receive that. And they would claim that on their corporate earnings tax. They would claim that and attach copies of the legislation when they file with RETA. So, and that's how they filed in the other communities with RETA. So they would file that, their corporate net return, which is different than their employee returns. So really you're administering two different programs through that. The employee wages, what we did, and I would imagine our verification process would be very similar here, would be we would request, the company would be, and we've changed the way that they would request the reimbursement. It would be a reimbursement. And they would have to document the taxable wages. We would go through the exercise where we would confirm those taxable wages, keeping confidentiality with RETA. We're just looking at aggregate totals. And then we would confirm those and then verify that based on the reimbursement, reimburse them the percentage of the award. Similarly, with the tax credit for the corporate net earnings, they would apply that on there with the copy of the legislation and the agreement. And we would have to work through RETA to acknowledge that. And again, those are going to be very few and far between. I mean, you're talking about large payroll providers, large companies with a big corporate net earnings tax liability that would offset that. So it's not going to be every company.
Yeah, as I've read this, I mean, I was kind of thinking this is really kind of designed to catch the unicorn. But there's enough unicorns out there that other communities are doing the same thing.
That's exactly right.
And we're going to be competitive then.
Yes.
This is also a program that's much more desirable to our school district because our CRAs can hit them pretty hard. The CRAs, our school district smart enough to realize that it's a little time without, comes back later, but they ideally would like to. So would your fire chief, for example, because it's not an impact to their bottom line. And when I wrote this program back in X number of year, I went way too soft. And when Corey and I realized that it was due to come back to you, I asked him, because of his economic development skills, that we ought to give it a chance to fester and let it really be something that's a carrot, because the CRAs really are only valuable truly on raw land. I've had multiple CRAs that have been given to additions and modifications, and once they get their modified tax bill, they say, geez, Dave, I thought it would have more of an impact. Well, that's not really the way the tax man look at it when he comes out and audits it. They really are beneficial to a Keith McCluskey who got one on raw land, but those are going to become less and less. And I think Corey recognizes that, and he said, I think we ought to really juice it up and let's see where it is. They're all coming to you. So I think he really did a great job in getting you something that'll let us compete. Go on Milford's website and see the litany of the menu of items that they offer to attract businesses, and that, it's one of the reasons we brought Corey in, because he knows how to do all of this stuff. So really encourage you. Let's see how this runs for a little while, and boy, if it lands just one big company, and look what you're doing. You're getting ready to embark on a massive redo of Loveland Madeira Road. And you're going to have the community entertainment district with your liquor license. But if you have these kind of things, it can really pay off dividends. So I think he did a wonderful job putting this into format that it's going to raise some eyebrows. My old program didn't raise any eyebrows. It just didn't. I went way too light. It wasn't appealing enough. And this is going to allow people to really go, wait a second. Because we found out the hard way not too long ago. One of our corporate companies, the head of a particular corporate company, came in my office and said, Dave, I'm getting builded out, and another community offered me a building. So just so you know, that to think that they're not trying to poach some of our businesses is that's the way it works in this business. And this is going to really, what he put is going to allow us to be ultra competitive. So, London Computer System left here because this city had nothing else to offer them. LCS left. I'm not saying this would have been a game changer because the footprint they had grown out of, but the tools in the toolbox thing he kept saying about is the key here. And if I'm Mike Broadwater, it's a school district, they love these kind of things. Nothing means nothing to them. So I really think this is a great, great program, and let it fester and see what happens. So
Yeah, particularly with Chestnut coming online, I think this will be
Sheesh.
valuable for that.
oh yeah.
Yeah. All right, well, go ahead and read the ordinance then.
Ordinance modifying the Job Creation Incentive Program for the City of Loveland, Ohio.
Okay. Thank you. I think next on the agenda is revisions to the 2022 appropriations. Mr. Medler?
Thank you, Vice Mayor. So this is another kind of yearly housekeeping item that we have to do. At the end of the year, our estimated fund balance and revenues have to be greater than or equal to our expenditure budgets. So sometimes if a project doesn't happen or if revenues don't come in quite as expected, we have to make adjustments to the expense budget. Doesn't mean that we're spending more or less than we thought. We just have to have the budget in line with our resources. So in this item, we're actually reducing the overall for all funds, not just the general fund. We're reducing all funds by $9,385,414.55. Now, this is due to a couple large things. There's some projects in the special projects fund that maybe didn't happen, so we didn't have some of the money that would have come in from that, from OPWC or anything like that. So that was about $3 million for those projects. We also had, for the past few years, we've had the placeholder for the garage project. So since that didn't happen this year, obviously we did not receive any of those bond funds that would come with that. So since that revenue didn't come in, the expenditure budget would have to go down. So there's about $6 million for there. So there's the big items that drive this item. There's a few little ones here and there. We have some of our contingency lines had to be tweaked a little bit. And we actually did have to increase the general fund just because of the Chestnut project. We have to have funding in place for that. So that was really the only one that had an increase.
Any questions, comments? So this is basically a reconciliation type of measure that needs to be taken just for the books to be closed in 2022.
Correct.
Okay. Why don't you go ahead and read the ordinance, please, Ms. Clark?
Ordinance to make revisions to appropriations for expenditures for the City of Loveland, State of Ohio during the fiscal year ending December 31st, 2020.
Okay. The next item is, of course, 2023. Talking about the operating budget and capital improvement program. Mr. Medler?
Thank you, Vice Mayor. Just kind of give a high-level overview. Been working on this for many months. Mr. Kennedy, I believe, started this back in, was it July? We got rolling, talking with CIP projects and working with the Finance Commission. They've put in a lot of hours, and I think we had 3 specific meetings dealing with the budget. So for this year, we had some kind of basic inflators for some salary increases that are going up. But the main driver is we have a lot of CIP projects that are going forward for general fund.
Okay, Mr. Kennedy might want to be heard as well on this.
Well, I just wanted to hit some of the highlights items on it. First of all, I gotta say that the team that we put together when we do this is pretty significant, but the glue is that Finance Commission. And I said in the closing part of my memo is that part of what we do here would be one thing if we were simply putting together a responsible budget, but of course with the City of Loveland, we're putting together a budget that also we put up for awards. So the Misties and the Beckys behind the scenes, refreshing everything is a big part of it. But I just really wanted to hit on a couple of highlights, and I think one of the things that stands out the most is the general fund revenues. Uh, this time last year, we were all excited that we were bringing forth a budget to you that for the first time ever was going to have $5 million in income tax revenue, and we actually are looking to finish the year at 6.1. This year, that is a major increase. This year, we have 2023 budgets at 6.3 million. Over 10 years, the city's income tax has increased by $2.5 million in 10 years. And not to be touched on to lessen it, but as the city's property valuations keep going up to $416 million in property valuations across all three counties, your real estate taxes go up. So for the 10th straight year, our real estate taxes are going to go up to $1,269,450. So if you combine in 2023 your income tax and your real estate taxes, it should be right around $7,563,000. Well, the general fund revenues are so important to this city, and I don't think we state it enough. But we run our police department on our general funds. We don't run our police department on a safety services levy. And that is a big deal for this community that we don't talk about it much. I would bet if I put 10 residents in a room and I'd say, how do you think we fund our, and I believe it comes up in Loveland U when Misty does this, but how do we fund our police department? I think they would be surprised that they're not on a levy. Those funds are also used, our park system, which we just keep expanding, we keep investing in. That comes out of your general fund, your sidewalks. Plus, we're going to talk about it in a minute, you're putting $1.2 million into your road program. Everything that's needed to supplement that up above the gas tax comes directly from your general fund. So it is a critical amount, but it's also a trigger because what is it saying? It's saying Corey and his people are doing a good job with economic development, right? But it's also saying that everyone else is doing the right things, that people are investing in this community. Police, fire, the whole shoot match. You know, I know when I come to Loveland because in the wintertime, because your roads are plowed. You know, those are the little things, not to mention school system. We all benefit. I'm sorry, John, I don't mean to point to you at the school system. But I that's why I thought that was a pretty big deal, that our general fund revenues are increasing that significant amount. So this year's CIP is something unique too, because I wish I would have put all the projects on a map, because if you put this year's CIP equipment, mostly projects on a map, you'll see it touches all corners of the city. I think that maybe it's a little bit of a bad rap that we spend all of our money downtown, because it's not true. And we $1.2 million. So that's your third year straight over $1 million. It's your second straight year at 1.2 million. If you, at the end of 2023, you'll have repaved 25% of your roads. Think about what you were doing when you were putting 280, 300,000. You were going in diverse because the roads that you were deferring were cracking, were falling apart, thus were costing you more. Cindy made that very clear, and that Stantec report really brought home to all of you. I know Ken's shaking his head. So investing another 1.2 million. We did 11.7 miles last year in our road program. Don't forget that we also paved Miami View, Chestnut, part of Wall, and all of Main Street. And that wasn't even in your road program. So you're really doing what you said you were going to do when you wanted to do your roads. I put in my weekly last week. I'm sure people just can't wait to read the weekly, but there were some important things in there. And two of them was two SCIP grants that Cindy was able to secure for the city. One is the East Loveland Bridge project. If this is one of those projects that I see no one really knows about, we're literally working with MSD, Claremont County engineers in the city, to improve this, replace a bridge, add sidewalks, repair a road, and repair storm drains, sidewalks all the way up to and beyond 5th Street. That's a major project, and that we're not taking any debt. We're getting all that through grant funding. The thing to know about that project, if Cindy wasn't able to secure that funding, the county was like, we're done waiting for you, we're replacing the bridge. So it would have been two major disturbances to those residents because of that. They would have done that, we would have had to come back, and now it's all being done. It's going to be a headache for 1 year. The Harrison Street widening project, who would have thunk it? It's finally coming through. No grant, no loan money involved in that. Harrison Street is going to be widened. Sidewalks on the Wicked Pickle side, that crazy turning radius off of Carl Brown will all be strengthened. But what Corey and I were talking about the other day, the thing about Harrison Road widening project that goes unappreciated is now you got a full green light to do everything in Nisbet. Because remember, you couldn't do anything because all the storm pipes are going to be replaced. That's a massive project. You have a council goal and a comprehensive plan that says you should connect your neighborhoods. What are you doing? You're running the first wave of sidewalks up Loveland Miamiville Road. That'll connect 3 subdivisions and ultimately could connect a brand new Claremont County Park. The turn lane project that Corey is working on State Route 48 at the mobile station, we've all heard it. Traffic. I've said this once, I've said it 1,000 times for all of you who know Tom Carroll. If there was one quick fix to the traffic, Tom would have done it. There isn't. It's a bunch of incremental fixes that we've been working on for years. And this is one of them that Corey's going to bring home. And that's an important project. And 4 park projects. We have 4 park projects, 3 that are being funded by grants, and 2 projects in 22 that are holdovers from 2 projects in 23 that are 22 holdovers. Gazebo should arrive in late summer, early spring, and lo and behold, after a bazillion years, West Loveland Bridge is finally going to get replaced, large in part, and she doesn't take any credit for it, but Kathy went to bat to the county, and Claremont County got us $200,000. That wasn't going to happen. Hamilton County had basically said no more money coming from Hamilton County. We weren't putting in another 200. So that new lighting, railing, and sidewalks on the north side, that's going to be a major project. So I'm trying to go fast. Corey and Misty had an intervention. I need to quit babbling, so I'm trying not to babble. But we have been working on this since July. But I do think that I would be remiss in not talking about expenditures versus revenues. I'm not saying it's the elephant in the room because the Finance Commission addressed it perfectly. First of all, of that expenditures exceeding revenues, $1 million of that is Chestnut. So no one is going to turn away from a Chestnut project that will pay the city dividends for years to come, and is supplemented by a $3.3 million grant. So there's a big component of it is that. Another big component of it is this turn lane project. We could have, and we discussed it at the Finance Commission, the Recreation TIF, which is the Chimney Ridge development, will begin to bring up to $3.2 million into the city through the Chimney Ridge development. I commend the Finance Commission because I teetered on the possibility that we take a short-term note, do everything we want to do at the mobile station, and let the Recreation TIF pay down that note. Well, the Finance Commission is like, why don't we just let the general fund be the bank? We have plenty of reserves. We don't take any interest payment. All of that goes into a master spreadsheet as Recreation TIF should level off at $240,000 a year when Chimney Ridge is finished to 3.2 in total by 2037. The general fund will get paid back every penny plus the prior debt service. So it makes sense. Why take the debt when you've got the funding in your reserves? Another items are we're doing some key studies. If there was one notion is in your council goals, city needs to quit messing around and take the lead on an alternate bridge. We have to. Corey's met with every neighboring community around, and they're all like, yeah, give us a call when you figure out where that bridge goes. So this city is going to take it upon themselves through Corey's leadership to fund a study under ODOT's guidance to help determine where this other bridge should be towards. This is decades from now. But you're planting seeds for trees that you never will sit under.
There you go.
That and also, you all have a very nice, fancy, brand new, comprehensive plan, right? It doesn't mean anything if you don't make your zoning code work with it. So $85,000 is budgeted and we met with a consultant this week to take your zoning code and make it work so your comprehensive plan works. If you don't have the tools in your zoning code, your comprehensive plan is just going to gather dust and sit on the the shelf. Lastly, the Finance Commission made a very good comment that I want to reiterate was, yes, Dave, you have plenty, the city has plenty of reserves, but the projects you're doing are community-based projects for the good of the community. So why wouldn't you spend down some of our reserves towards community-based projects for our residents? The money in the reserves is our residents' money. So I think that that's an important part of it. And I am remiss because a lot of this has to do with Cindy. But again, $3,024,801 was put in grant request by this are out there for this project. And I find it interesting that since this memo was written, Cindy found out that 2 of them slide from the funding decision to the funding approved thing. So that's an important part of that. Lastly, this is the last time the city will have to spend time tracking down spreadsheet formulas with errors. God love Corey Schmidt, but and we all did. He was a wonderful man, but that spreadsheet needs to be a ceremonial blow up. So we will be bringing. Staff has been working hard to identify an extremely good software that will take this process, streamline it, make it even more transparent, and it will be something that Mark will be using throughout the year, because it's going to allow us to generate reports and create reports. How's the water maintenance repair fund doing? There you go. How much has been expended? You're going to be able to. That's a big part of these softwares. They're not just something you pull out in September to do your budget. This will be used throughout the year. So I think I am finished with that. There are some other key studies that we're including that will lead to important items. Corey's dusting off an old study on the roundabout proposal at Lebanon and West Loveland that we think we can get that made to work. That's an important project that could really help traffic up in that area. There's some other key studies that we're working on that aren't in your CIP. I'm done, and I'll take any questions that you might have.
Mr. Ori.
Not questions, but comments. Mr. Medler and Mr. Kennedy, you both and staff and all the department heads, you've done a fantastic job with putting this together. You know, a $35 million budget is extraordinary. Mr. Kennedy, you captured some of the things that I wanted to comment on, so I'm not going to redo it. But I just have to say to anybody who's watching or anybody who wants to know, this memo that was put together for us to go with the budget, it's pages 133 through 145 of the packet today. I would recommend that everybody pick that up and read it, because it is an excellent explanation of how the city operates, where the money goes, where it comes from. It's all spelled out pretty easy to understand it. And also pages 7 through 17 are the CIP budget. So again, kudos to you guys for doing a great job. So.
Go ahead.
I think
Blair.
as the council member designate to the Finance Commission, I think it needs to be pointed out that every line, every dollar of income and outgo, of revenue, expense, of assets and liabilities gets itemized and analyzed and rationalized and philosophized and idealized before it gets finalized to go into this budget. A couple of hundred pages on both sides. And, you know, we measure the cash flow that we get against prudent reserves. Most years we spend less than we take in. Some years we spend more than we take in. This is one of those years that we're spending more than we take in. but it's by design. It's not by accident. It's by intent. We keep reserves. We keep significant reserves, offset the unforeseen, the rainy days, the COVID epidemics, stuff like that. And sometimes we spend those reserves down a bit for the sake of prudent management. We have those reserves. To Mr. Kennedy's point, it's the taxpayers' money, but we have to manage those reserves. And you can have big reserves and you can have small reserves. If your reserves get too big, then you're not managing your money right, and that's no good. If your reserves get too small, you're not managing your money right, and you're taking too much risk. Our budget process takes all of that into account. Our finance commission, which consists of five really smart guys and one relatively dumb old guy, along with Mr. Medler and Mr. Bastin and their bazillion years of experience, and Mr. Kennedy and his leadership team go through this stuff over and over and over again. And I think to the point you made a minute ago, Neil, I am in absolute agreement. It's every city and every member of the community of Loveland can be very satisfied and go to sleep at night not worrying about the city's money, because the city's money is being well taken care of, well managed, and well executed.
I did have just one note that I forgot because Misty, she keeps track how long I talk. One of the things that I wanted to say, that part of what this city is important and what we're heading to, and we've been heading to this for a few years, is we're adding more buckets. So let's be honest, our income tax mostly came from two large buckets, the Commerce Park and the school district. And that's fine. Those are very important buckets. But if the city can add more buckets, we're what makes the Masons and the Blue Ashes what they are so financially solid. Their buckets are coming from different areas. We have a growing bucket in the downtown district. And the reason I'm bringing this up is because one of the key studies that's going to be going on through 2022 is an answer in response to your comprehensive plan, which is all in on Loveland Madeira Road. Well, that requires a myriad of plans to be ready for Corey to be able to submit to OKI funding that can make all of the pedestrian improvements come. And then now you've got another bucket, the Loveland Madeira Road bucket, anchored by Oasis and all of that. And you're much more diversified. You'll have a much more diversified economy if all of the different budgets are coming in. Commerce Park, the school, the importance of our school district, the downtown bucket, which is a bunch of feeders into one bucket, and then the Loveland Madeira Road bucket. And I think that's the key for this city, is the economic diversity that you're slowly creating. And Loveland Madeira Road is the key. I hope 10 years from now I drive back, because Corey invited me to lunch, and we drive down Loveland Madeira Road and I go, holy, insert word, because, it's tired. And that comprehensive plan did a wonderful job of addressing that. And we have studies working towards what's going to put the city in line for big pedestrian streetscaping, consolidation of 18,000 curb cuts that don't need to be there. And then while you're making the public investment, then comes the private investment, and then your bucket starts to grow. So those are the studies you don't see because they're not on the CIP. And I meant to add that, but has me on the clock. So.
Any other questions or comments? I know this just was in our packet for the first time on Friday, so I assume everybody's going to take some time to look through it as closely as they can. If there are questions that can be fielded between now and then by Mr. Medler or Mr. Kennedy, invite people to do that, and I invite the public to do that as well. If they have questions on line items, we're going to be here next week.
On the web, too.
It's on the website as well. We're going to be here in 2 weeks, and certainly questions can be raised at that point in time. But yes, I think it's important not to lose sight of the fact that These are investments. We're not building a new city hall. We're not increasing salaries for council members. It's being money's being spent next year in ways that will yield returns that will far eclipse the amount that we're spending, especially as you think about a Chestnut Street project. So they seem to be well thought out. And again, I would commend also our Finance Committee Commission for all their time and attention put into this, as well as staff's. All right, we'll return to that in a couple of weeks.
I need to read the ordinance.
Yeah, please read the ordinance.
Ordinance to make appropriations for current expenses and other expenditures of the City of Loveland, State of Ohio during the fiscal year ending December 31st, 2023.
Okay, and then I think we have 3 items left that deal with utility bills for our 3 counties. Anything you want to add, Mr. Medler?
Vice Mayor. So these are our quarterly utility bill payments for unpaid bills that will go to the tax bills of the parcels.
And this is routinely done by us as well.
Yes, it's routinely done and also done as an emergency, as we have addressed before.
Okay. Any comments or questions? Otherwise, why don't you go ahead and read the first one, Ms. Clark?
Ordinance assessing liens for unpaid utility bills on property in Warren County owed to the City of Loveland and declaring an emergency.
Please go ahead and take the roll.
Mr. Ori?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Phelps?
Yes.
Mr. Ping?
Yes.
Mr. Bateman?
Yes.
Mr. Blair?
Yes.
Mr. Hart?
Yes.
Ordinance 120 is adopted by a vote of 6-0.
Please read the next one.
Ordinance assessing liens for unpaid utility bills on property in Hamilton County owed to the City of Loveland and declaring an emergency.
Any comment, questions? Otherwise, call the roll, please.
Vice Mayor Phelps?
Yes.
Mr. Ping?
Yes.
Mr. Bateman?
Yes.
Mr. Blair?
Yes.
Mr. Hart?
Yes.
Mr. Ori?
Yes.
Ordinance 121 is adopted by a vote of 6-0.
Then go ahead and read the third one as well, Ms. Clark.
Ordinance assessing liens for unpaid utility bills on property in Claremont County owed to the City of Loveland and declaring an emergency.
Any questions or comments? Seeing none, go ahead and take the roll.
Mr. Ping?
Yes.
Mr. Bateman?
Yes.
Mr. Blair?
Yes.
Mr. Hart?
Yes.
Mr. Ori?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Phelps?
Yes.
Ordinance 122 is adopted by a vote of 6-0.
Thank you. There's no councilmanic reports. There's a mayor's court report from October of 22. It's in your packet. Any questions or comments on that? Hearing none. I'll also note there's committee minutes and reports. There's the August 8th, 2022 committee minutes from the Beautification Committee, the October 13, 22 Parks and Recreation Board minutes, and the October 13, 2022 Tree and Environment Committee minutes. Any comments? Okay. This will allow us to move to City Council reports and comments. Mine have to do with upcoming events. I can cover those, but if somebody else wants to bring up something for the good of the order, they can.
Happy Thanksgiving.
Here's what's happening in the next few days. City offices will be closed, of course, on Thursday and Friday for Thanksgiving. Happy Thanksgiving to everyone. The Loveland Sustainability Council is going to have a collection bin placed at City Hall to recycle old and broken holiday lights. So you drop your lights off from November 26, 2022 to January 20th, 2023. Shop small and support hometown businesses this weekend for Small Business Saturday. Santaland will return on December 3rd from 11 a.m. to 3 p.m. at the Loveland Plaza near the Goodwill. Across from the Goodwill? No.
In the same.
Same one. Okay. And then the community Christmas tree lighting. That's going to be done on December 3rd from 4 p.m. to 8 p.m. in downtown Loveland at Jackson Street Market. Details are available on the city's Loveland Loveland.com website. And then Christmas in Loveland is December 17th, correct? Okay. With that, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
Is there a second?
Second.
Please read the roll.
Mr. Bateman,
Yes.
Mr. Blair,
Yes.
Mr. Hart,
Yes.
Mr. Ori,
Yes.
Vice Mayor Phelps,
Yes.
Mr. Ping.
Yes.
Motion carries 6-0.